Welcome to the Mastery Podcast, where stories unlock the secret of an empowered and abundant life. Introducing Anju Redheendran. She's a nurse, a champion of the human spirit, and as a life coach, her mission is to liberate career professionals who are also people pleasers, workaholics, and perfectionists, leading them to feel free, joyful, and fulfilled. She empowers them to live authentically, unburdened by the need for social approval. With a diverse background in nursing and wellness, Anju's guidance addresses health challenges while nurturing the soul. Her non-judgmental approach fosters self-reintegration, healing deep wounds that success may bring. Today, Anju shares her profound insights on the human condition, illuminating the path to lasting well-being and career fulfillment. Embrace the transformation. Your spirit deserves to soar. Join her as she guides you towards a life that's true to your heart, where authenticity thrives and joy becomes your beacon. Without further ado, let's meet our special guest, Anju. Welcome, Anju.
Thank you so much.
Great to be talking to you today. Anju, I know I did that long introduction, but can you tell us a little bit about your life story, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, according to my my introduction, I'm pretty successful. I was on paper, I'm a nurse, an ICU nurse by trade. Then I went on to become a nursing director. Then I worked in healthcare IT. I got a business degree, a bachelor's of science in nursing, a master's in business administration, and then a master's pending in medical informatics. And so while I was in medical informatics is when I decided to get that second master's. And then I started questioning things about my life. And this leads to another story too. I'm like, why am I doing this? Because I could probably teach this at this point. And then my dad's like, why are you spending so much money on this other degree? But there was this thing inside me that was like, I'm not good enough. I need to do more, be more. And that if you're Indian or Asian, you probably understand this, the need to perform. I had a very performative sense of love, like how I'm going to get love and respect. It's through my performance and my achievements. Otherwise, I didn't deserve to be seen. And that was kind of my mentality. But let me take you back, because that all changed due to different circumstances. My childhood was that when I was 6 years old, my mother died in a car accident. And then when I was 7, my father committed suicide after she died. But in between the time she died and the time he took his life, my father had his mom, so my grandma, and then his brother, which is my uncle, and then the uncle's wife and daughter come to visit during our bereavement period. And so they stayed with us from May to November. And November is when he took his own life. So then they ended up taking us in as their own children and raising us. So I have a bonus family now that consists of my papa, amma, and my sister, Renju. She's technically my cousin, but I grew up with her and she's my sister now. And so that's kind of my background story of my origination story. But coming from that kind of background caused a lot of turmoil within me. A lot of things were unsettled, as you can imagine, because all these types of events in our life are sometimes overwhelming, breeding like helplessness, hopelessness, fear into us. And that's what trauma actually is. It's those things that live within us. Think about it like this. Like if two people got into a car accident, they could have totally different reactions to that car accident. One could be like, let's say it's a 15-mile-an-hour fender bender. And nothing really happened. They weren't damaged. There's some maybe car damage. One person could be like, oh, thank God, nothing really happened and we're okay. The other person could be, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And it could sit and fester in their nervous system. And they don't know how to get past that. And that is the feeling that I'm talking about, that the feeling of trauma, because the actual event may or may not have been traumatic, but what happens within us is the trauma. And that's what Gabor Mate says. He's a doctor that handles, that talks about, he's an internal medicine doctor that focuses on early childhood trauma and addiction. And he says trauma is not necessarily just what happens to us, it's what happens inside us as a result. And then how we decide to respond to those things. Mm-hmm. So that is kind of my background. And so the people I generally tend to help are people who have some sort of unresolved trauma on some level. Maybe they're aware or unaware of it, but it's still trauma.
Yes, that is so true. I think if you are living on this earth, walking mm-hmm. and still breathing, you have some type of trauma. But you're talking about like some, oh my gosh, Anju, that's some traumatic childhood. And for you to kind of brace through it, become a successful nurse, and ICU nurse, like that's major, that's a lot of studying and informatics and all those stuff. And now you own your own business. Amazing to blaze through life and process all that stuff. It's amazing. I just want to commend you for that. Want to commend you for on this podcast and share your story mm-hmm. and being the person that you are. And with that said, it didn't come with a price, right? Growing up, it was difficult for you at times. Yes. And want to share with us about how you feel, not that your adopted parents, which your uncle and aunt, not that they are not good enough. They're there for you, mm-hmm. but you feel a certain way because your biological parents weren't around.
Yeah.
Can you share with us the story?
Yeah, I think my biggest struggle in life has been a sense of abandonment or lack of really feeling accepted, a sense of belonging after that happened. In my family of origination, my parents, I'm Indian, and in the Indian culture, especially if you're in India in the 70s, 60s or 70s, love marriages. There's love marriages and arranged marriages. My parents were love marriage. They chose each other. So they enjoyed each other's company. They were celebrating each other. They were chasing each other around. They were hugging and kissing and very affectionate. And that's what I saw. That was my example of what love was. The very fun, playful, affectionate, chasey kind of arrangement. And then when I lost them, I went into another family that was arranged, and the feeling was very different. It wasn't the bubbly, lovey-dovey, touchy-feely kind of thing. It was obligation. It was discipline. It was things that needed to be done. And we had a lot of fun too, but it was a very different feel to go from a family of parents where they were happy and they enjoyed each other, to parents who didn't necessarily choose each other. That feeling was the first feeling I felt as a differentiation growing up. The second thing was, in my family of origination, I was like a free spirit. I was also very young. I was only 6 and 7 years old, but I was a free spirit. I didn't have many rules. My mom made me food that we connect through food, by the way. Food, affection, and time together, or our family's love languages. And so she would like make things, and I'd be nibbling on them and tasting them as she was making them. And then she would make the most amazing dish in the world. It was basically a butter sandwich. That was exactly what it sounds like. A piece of bread, some butter, and another piece of bread. And then I ate it. I was like, why is this so good? She said, because it's made with love. And I was like, love food. She's like, it's love food. And I said, oh, I love that. So then, and that's true, because when food is made with love, it nourishes us. And so I just have all these little memories of coming from that setup, that love. And then in my family, my bonus family, I learned to be disciplined. I learned to have structure. I learned to have and keep and make commitments. So it was more serious, but it was also necessary. And I don't know how much of that I would have gotten in my family of origination the way I got it, the way I needed to receive it. So I very much also appreciate what I received from my bonus family, all the lessons there. It wasn't easy. It was very tough emotionally because I wanted a sense of belonging so badly. And there's something weird. If you think about people who are even abused by their parents, like they will love them no matter what because they belong to them. Mm-hmm. And then they can get into relationships where they're abused, but they belong to them, so they'll stay. But that's how we are as humans. Like we sometimes, unless we learn another way, we will just take whatever we need to take in order to belong. Mm-hmm. And so, I belonged to my parents, my biological parents, in my mind. No matter what happened in my life, I still belonged to them. No matter if they were still not here, some part of me just belonged to them. And that was a very hard hurdle for me to overcome. I did accept my family, my bonus family as my family, but it was a hard process to kind of I had to let go of this to be able to accept that. Or did I? Could I accept that both were a part of me? And that was the integration that I had to learn for myself. I could accept both as being part of me. And I didn't have to completely relinquish one. I probably had to accept the fact that they were gone and they were no longer coming back, and accept the fact that I had this new life and I had to work with what I had. But at the same time, I can accept the fact that I did come from this background, this genetics, this love. But I also came from this nurturing, this raising and stuff like that. So I'm a combination, an integration of both of those. And when people go through those types of things, we wonder where we belong, right? When we go through something hard, it affects our identity. And that's what I help people with. So when people are very accomplished, successful career people, it usually comes with a price. And that price is forsaking your authenticity for the sake of pleasing your parents and getting the good grades and getting the achievements and getting the degrees and all that stuff. Workaholism is, sometimes if you're not really you don't feel loved, then at least you'll be needed. Make yourself useful. And then that's the workaholism. People-pleasing workaholics and perfectionist. The perfectionist is just the person who doesn't feel good enough. So they keep on trying harder, better, bigger. And you see that a lot in our world here in the United States anyways. Very material drive for things because those are symbols of our value. But then if you take away that symbol of the value, can you still see your value?
And this is when you talk about, it doesn't matter what accolades you get, what grades you have and what you accomplish, you still you're not good enough, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And you said at one point, you did mention, not on this podcast, through our conversation, there are 3 things that you believe that define a good enough person. And you share with us those 3 things.
So perfectionists generally come from a place where we feel things need to be perfect. And we think that things need to be perfect because we're told, well, go figure it out. Make it happen, right? So then we look around at the examples of things and then we're like, oh, it has to be this. And we're not giving guidance. So I'm going to give you some guidance on what it means to be good enough. The first thing is to be good-hearted. Meaning not really have ill will towards people. You do things out of the kindness of your heart. It doesn't mean you're perfect. None of these things are 100%. I'm saying 80% of the time. You're generally a good-hearted person. And you want what's best for others. You want what's best for yourself, but you also want what's best for others. It's not an either or. Only for the best for them or only the best for me. It's not one of those things. It can be both. Then that leads me to number 2, which is fairness. Because fairness is not just one or the other. it could be both. A sense of fairness, generally speaking. That's not to say you can't be unfair sometimes, but generally speaking, you have a sense of fairness. And the third thing is you honor your commitments. That's it. So if you say you're going to do something, you generally do it. So your words mean something. Mm-hmm. And that's what it takes to be a good enough person. Now, if you have a Mercedes, that doesn't make you a good person. That's cool. That's good for you. And you might be wealthy or something, but that doesn't make you a good person necessarily, like a good enough person. But we get that wrong. We think that if we see something like material or a physical representation of something, that they must be a certain way. They must be a smart person, a good person, or perfect. They must be perfect.
Right.
They might have excellent habits, but they're not a perfect person. And they're certainly not a good enough person just because they have wealth or accolades. Mm-hmm. A good enough person really has humanity is what it comes down to.
Well put. I really resonate with that. I'm definitely going to write this down. A good enough person is the person who want good for themselves and for others.
Yeah.
And a good enough person. What's the second one? The second
fair.
One was
you're generally pretty fair. You could be fair-minded.
Fair to both, fair to others, and fair. You got to have that self-love, right? And treat yourself fairly. Yeah. And the third thing was commitment to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Honor your commitments to yourself and others.
Nice.
So sometimes we wonder if we're on the right path, right? Mm-hmm. And the one thing you need to ask yourself is, am I betraying myself in any way? Mm-hmm. So are you saying yes when you mean no, or vice versa? Are you acting out of not really wanting to do something, but you're doing it anyway? If you do those types of things, you are betraying yourself. When you betray yourself, you breed contempt. And contempt is the number one feeling that kills connection. So the thing you want to avoid is contempt in your relationships, in the way you connect with people, because that will kill any sort of attempt at connection you have. And that's generally why people end up getting divorced, is because they have feelings of contempt for the other person because they betrayed themselves, or they feel that person made them betray themselves. That's usually the feeling.
I resonate with that, and I understand that completely, because I'm one of those people. In the past, of course, no longer that. I kind of, but a lot of us, women especially, going into relationship, betraying themselves, trying to be the good enough, right? And please, whether it be their boss, their clients, their partner, their family, it's all those.
It is. And it's really interesting because Gabor Mate talks about this a lot. We have two basic emotional needs. One is to feel a sense of acceptance. Another is to feel a sense of authenticity. Sometimes these two concepts are in conflict. In an ideal world, we would feel accepted for being our authentic self. That's where we would all love to be. That's where we're not necessarily. But if you think about it, even in childhood, even as I was telling you my story about my parents, my biological parents, what makes any child feel good enough is they're so narcissistic, right? Because everything in the child under 10 is about them. Like they cause that in someone else. So if they see their parents happy, they cause that. They're like, that's because I'm great. That's because I made my mom happy. Mm-hmm. So the greatest gift you can give your child, I'm not saying to do everything for them. I'm saying to let them see you in a joyful or happy state. Amongst all the other things, the stress and all that other stuff you feel, generally when you look at them and interact with them, if you can let them experience you in a happy state, then they have they'll learn the capacity to feel good enough.
Nice.
Isn't that weird? Because think about this. When you look at the acceptance and your authenticity, we want to be accepted by our parents. And so a lot of that comes down to, did I do this okay? Did I do this right? And we're looking for their validation about whatever we do. And we're looking for them to say, yeah, good boy, Johnny, you did well. Or, Elise, you're such a good girl, something like that. We want that validation, especially as kids. And then you made mommy happy, something like that. They want to feel that feeling like I made my mom happy. And that's where the people pleasing kind of starts. At some point, usually in adolescence, the function of adolescence, and it's not abnormal. This is the purpose of adolescence, is differentiation from your family of origin or from those core beliefs that they grew up with, to differentiate and develop their own set of beliefs, their own sense of self. Now, during that time, if they're not allowed to kind of explore that in its entirety, and that's why they're kind of abrasive. They're like, oh, mom and dad, they're stupid. They don't know anything. They go to other adults or their friends to get advice. This is why it's good to have a good network of other adult friends that your children can rely on to, pass on the values that you want to instill in them, because they will go to them. But they have to go through this. This is a healthy and normal process of human development and adolescence to differentiate. And this is what the butterfly does in metamorphosis. The caterpillar goes along, and it basically has a digestive tube and some other, skin cells and things like that. But it turns into the cocoon, where it actually dissolves completely. So it can differentiate and then can form the imaginal cells, they're called, to form the wings and things like that. Because if you look at a butterfly and a caterpillar, they look nothing like the same entity. They go through an entire disintegration process. And the only thing that remains basically the same is their digestive tract, I believe.
That's a huge transformation, right?
It is. And when they're in their cocoon, their job is to use their wings, their own power, to push through. That's when they can fly and flourish. Now, if someone cuts open that cocoon, the butterfly will come out with its wings still curled and won't be able to fully push, because they didn't do the work. They didn't make the effort to push out. So they become failure to thrive, and they can die. This is also part of adolescence. You don't do the work for your kids. You let them struggle. That struggle makes them be able to fly later on in life. You don't have to cause the struggle, but you don't have to.
Don't make it hard on them on purpose.
Don't necessarily make it hard on them, because life is already hard. There's different things in life that we all encounter that we as parents don't need to make it hard on them. But don't do the work, the hard work, the push, the practice, all that stuff. They have to do that work to be able to stand on their own and grow their own wings so they can flourish on their own. That's where the strength comes from doing that work. And it is internal work. It is sometimes external work too, because you might have to do reps in the gym and, build your muscles like that. That could be part of it. You might have to do the gymnastic routines over and over to practice. You might have to study and then, fail and then try again and fail. And then you finally succeed. But all that is valuable. But in a perfectionist world, we are taught we can never fail. We can never do poorly. We can never make mistakes. So then we become very severe in our personalities. And then when we see it, we actually get jealous when we see other people that are allowed to be emotional, make mistakes. They're like, well, why aren't they getting punished? I was punished on some level. I felt punished. Maybe you weren't physically punished, but maybe it felt like you were punished. And a lot of perfectionism comes from that setup, that psychological, spiritual, emotional setup, where you feel you cannot be accepted unless you're perfect. You can only be noticed when you're doing the right thing or when you're representing the family properly and, a good image for the family is usually the case when you're younger.
Yeah, we see a lot of this actually in the professional arena, right? Especially women haven't gone through that metamorphosis stage, or it really when you don't go through it as a teenager, you will face something in your life that cause you to want to kind of just break out of your cocoon, right? And that kind of happens for you
It does.
in adulthood, right?
Yeah.
Can you give some example about that? And I'm sure a lot of
Okay.
people
Delayed metamorphosis is this. Anything that makes you feel like your ego is dying in adulthood. So losing your job, losing your marriage, failures in usually relationships. I think relationships and job are the big ones for adults. There can be many others, but I think those are the heavy hitters, especially for the people that I tend to work with. And here's the thing. It's because we tie so much of our identity to our career. We tie so much of our identity to our marriage or, our family and things like that. But think about this. Before we had the job, before we were married, we were also still a person then. We were the person that made these things happen. We were the person we were who we always were. So we don't lose our identity when we lose. I can speak for this for myself, because I worked at Tenet Healthcare as a manager in clinical informatics for 10 years. Wow. And then so that was 2010 to 2020, I was there. In about 2018, I had a little bit of I hit a wall mentally, and I've always been a performer. That is something I could depend on from myself. Like, I can make things happen, hit the ground running. I didn't need a lot of direction or anything. I was like, tell me the objective, I'll make it happen. Mm-hmm. So, and I associated with those types of people too. So I was really in my element. I was working with those types of people. And then all of a sudden I couldn't think. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't think. I was like, what's going on? And then my intuition kicked in. It's like, maybe you need to check in with yourself and handle the things that were still unresolved from your past. I was like, maybe you're right, self. And so then I checked myself out of work for 6 weeks. I told my boss, I was like, hey, look, something within me needs to be resolved, and I need to go really just take some time to care for myself. I don't mean like do your hair and nails. I mean like the deep stuff, the digging in the unresolved things that are still triggering. If anything's triggering you, there's something unresolved in your soul. So that's what I recognized about myself. And I said, let me go handle this. And I took 6 weeks off of work. I worked with a CBT counselor. Mm-hmm. I worked with a life coach who specialized in relationships, and then neurofeedback. So because I understood that like a lot of these things sit in our body, especially in our nervous system. And I knew I had a very obvious trauma with both my parents dying when I was very young. Mm-hmm. But also our template for relationships come from the relationships that we kind of had with our parents and what we felt in those moments, different moments with our parents, both mother and father. Because sometimes you might get with a girl that reminds you of your mother. Sometimes you might get with a guy that reminds you of your father. Or vice versa. You could get, girl that reminds you of your father, man that reminds you of your mother, in terms of maybe how they emoted or how they handled the situation. We traditionally think of, a man thinks, I'm going to get a girl that's like my mother. And a girl thinks, I'm going to get a guy that's like my father. But the opposite could be also true. There could be masculine and feminine elements mixed into the other gender too. Mm-hmm. And so, so we're actually responding to that energy, those feelings that we get when we interact with someone. It's like when they feel familiar to us, it's because we've experienced that feeling or emotion, that energy in the past of this kind of energetic interaction. So, relationships. So I checked out and went to these, the therapist and the neurofeedback and the life coach. I didn't realize what I was doing in my relationships. So that's why I got the life coach first. But I felt like the person I was with at the time was like my biological dad. Mm-hmm. And I had some unresolved feelings of abandonment with my dad that I just swept under the rug to keep on going. Because one thing achievers master is perseverance, right? We know how to go, push through it, ignore the feelings. We seem like we don't have emotions for that reason, but we do. We do. We just ignore them or push past them to get to the end, to feel accepted, to feel a semblance of normalcy, or better yet, to be like acknowledged or feel valuable, because we don't feel valuable on some level. Like, we don't feel worthy of a lot. So that's why we keep on pushing to feel enough, to feel worthy, to feel valuable. And then we adorn ourselves with things like rings and makeup and hair and stuff like that to feel valuable. But when you take all that away, we just don't feel valuable. Like, if anything is threatened, we don't feel valuable. But that's what we need to get past. So, when it comes down to feeling good about yourself, it's an inside job. It really has nothing to do with other people, what other people say about you past childhood. Because if you didn't get it in childhood, you have to do it for yourself in adulthood. Imagine this. Think about how many people are like, oh yeah, you're so pretty. You're so knowledgeable. You're so accomplished. And that makes you feel good. But then you still want it more. Like, tell me I'm pretty again. Tell me how good I am. Tell me how valuable I am. We want that. But if we don't feel it intrinsically within ourselves, we'll never believe that 100%. That's my point. So that's what I help people come back to. And so I went through it myself when I lost my job. I'm like, oh my God, I felt I got laid off during COVID. And I felt such a sense of rejection. In like 2020 is when this happened. So 2 years after I went through all this work with the therapist and things like that. And the therapist said something really important to me. He's like, Anju, you're not a human doing, you're a human being. And I was like, what does that even mean? He's like, you can be loved for just being you. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to do anything. I was like, shut your mouth. Of course I do. You have to earn love. You have to earn respect, all this stuff. And then he's like, no, you don't. I was like, do babies have to earn your love and respect? And I was like, no. And then he's like, they poop, pee, and vomit, and you still love them. They're not doing anything for you. They're not proving themselves. They're just being. You're lovable. That's where you came from too. You're lovable just for being. And I knew he was right. I didn't know how he was right though, because I spent so much time and effort trying to prove that I'm worthwhile. I wanted my bonus parents to feel that I was a worthwhile person to take care of, to come, because they left their life in Kuwait to come take care of us. And they didn't take me and my brother back to Kuwait. They came, left their life there, and stayed with us. So to me, I was like, I was proving myself, like, I hope I'm worthwhile. But the way I was proving myself is to make money, to get a good job, to, be a high-ranking nursing professional. But that doesn't make you a good person, like good enough person necessarily. I was focused on the wrong things. And when I eventually ended up getting laid off during COVID, I was partially devastated. I say partially for a reason, because I was like, oh my God, I feel rejected. I spent 10 years working so hard, putting my blood, sweat, and tears into this place just to be taken off the email list the next day. Like, I wasn't even in the system or nothing was there. No remnant of me was there. I was dead to them. That was a hard feeling to process. But at the same time, I'm like, who am I without that job, these accolades, I had to really think about this. I was like, well, I'm still Anju. I'm still the person that has all these qualities, that made this happen, that worked at this place successfully for a long time. So it doesn't take away from me that I got laid off necessarily, unless I let that be the meaning I assigned to that event in my life. So then I was like, well, honestly, this allows me to be more me, because then I could start the business I've always wanted to start, which is a coaching business. And I was like, this is kind of a blessing. Yes, I felt rejected. Of course I felt rejected, because who wants to get, either fired or let go from something. And I'd never been let go or fired from anything before this. So let me preface it by saying that. So this was net new for me. I was in my mid-40s. I was divorced, single mom, single income. I had to sell my house. I had to go move in with a friend. I was in a toxic relationship, and all these things kind of culminated in one big zit in life.
I so much relate with that story.
But I wanted to pop that zit. I was like, I'm done with this. I don't need this pattern to keep on happening in my life. I enjoy success, and success does feel natural to me because I know how to work hard. And usually people that work hard and have achieved some success feel like success is natural. So that's kind of who I work with. But also, I wasn't prepared when the poop hit the fan, when I got laid off. And I was like, oh no, what do I do? But that's who I want to help. That's who I focus on helping, because there is a way to feel fulfilled, joyful, and peaceful within yourself, despite all the crap that's happened in your life. Mm-hmm. And that's what I help people with.
Thank you. Oh my God, I just can listen to you all day. And amazing. You touch on so many important points. And I like it when you say, and I heard this before, and I live by it. You're not a human doing. You are a human being, mm-hmm. and you don't need to do anything to receive love, to
be worthy of love.
Be worthy of love. You just be yourself.
Be yourself.
And this is what you help people with, to like be their authentic self and be okay with it. And I resonate with everything you said, about being overachiever, perfectionist, and, all the stuff I also been through. And I think we need more people like you to come out and be a coach and a guidance for like, perfectionists and all those people out there. And they are.
And it's hard for us to ask for help. That's the other thing.
It is. So,
that's the trick here, because this is a safe place.
When you're not ready, because I was one of those people, when I'm not ready and people ask, oh, do you blah, 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 can I support you? Like, oh, no, I don't need any help. I'm good.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Well, that hyper independent. I want to talk about this because we're women and we're like strong, independent, we're accomplished women, career women. Hyper independence is very common in people like us because we were let down on some level emotionally in a formidable state in our life. Like when we were hoping that someone would do something for us, or they said they would do something for us, and they ended up saying, no, I can't, or sorry, you got to do it yourself, or, you got to figure it out now, I can't make it. Something happened, conscious or subconsciously to us, or unconsciously, where we were put in that situation where we were let down, usually by a male figure, because the male provides. And if they don't if their words don't align with their actions to, especially their daughters or something, then, or if they neglect us or they abuse us, something, if we're not on the radar, basically, then we feel the need to fend for ourselves. That's what hyper independence is about. Never mind, I got it, move over, I got this. And then we do that all our lives. Move over, I got this. And then we're like, hey, where is everyone? Why isn't anyone helping me? But did you forget this part? Move over, I got this. You told them to get out of your way. So that's where we have to see where our actions, our thoughts, our behaviors, and our feelings play a part in how our lives are manifesting, how our relationships are manifesting, how our coworkers are interacting with us. Because I was definitely that person, but luckily my counterpart at work was kind of a similar person. She's like, we were both people who, kicked ass and take names and stuff, but we saw that in each other, so we could rely on each other. So we wouldn't allow each other to say, oh, I don't need help. Screw you, I'm helping you. That's basically what we said. So we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have to take your help. We want someone to push through and, say, no, I am here for you. She was very healing for me. That relationship I had with her was very healing for me. she actually, one of the first things she said to me when I work at Tenet was, she's like, "You're not very vulnerable, are you?" I was like, "Do I need to be?" That's what I said. And so, but it didn't register to me. It's like, what is she saying? But I didn't really put myself out there to be helped. I didn't put myself out there, but I really didn't feel like I needed to be helped. But you know what? It was such a relief when I did get help. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And then I loved it. I embraced it. I was like, "Please help me." And I always look for her. So it was nice because we could depend on each other. And that kind of broke some of my hyper independence patterns down. Because I could rely on at least one other person that gave me comfort.
I like that term, hyper independence. And I swear, so many people, healthcare professionals, doctors, pharmacists, and, ICU nurses, really, success driven. And I can see that in myself in the past, like my ex-husband. I was like pushing him away. Don't get in here. I got it. And to the point where people were saying to us like, "So who's wearing the pants in the house?" and I was like, and I didn't know what it meant back then. And now looking back, I kind of know, it's just like you think you can take care of everything, but you don't need to.
Yeah, you don't need to. And that is the point. But maybe at some point you did need to. Mm-hmm. But just because that happened for a time in your life doesn't mean at this other time you can't adopt new habits to invite something else in that feels gentle to you, that feels nurturing to you. Because you deserve gentleness and nurturing too. You don't always have to be the one providing it. You can be open to receiving it. It's okay.
It is okay.
But we don't know that. We think, "Oh no, I have to keep it all together. I have to be the strong one." And you know what? A lot of women become warriors because they didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. If we had the choice for comfort and protection, I think most of us would take that. But since we didn't get that, we learn different skills. But are those skills applicable all the time, always? No. Sometimes we need to learn like the complementary skill. Mm-hmm. Balance, the counterbalance to that.
Right.
And there's another thing I want to talk about, because all these things come from kind of a same place. When we think about, like, these are kind of toxic traits. When we talk about toxicity, what is toxicity? There's two concepts. There's one that's guilt and one there's shame. Mm-hmm. Guilt is feeling bad for doing something wrong, like an act. Mm-hmm. Shame is, I am bad. You feel just guilty about your existence almost. Mm-hmm. And so it's like you feel like you have inherent flaws. When you feel like you have inherent flaws, you feel imperfect. And that's what a lot of perfectionism is about. So perfectionism is toxic, I'm sorry to say. I'll say it to you because it's the truth. And so toxic people operate, or people with toxicity. They're not toxic people. They are people with toxicity. They operate from a place of shame, primarily. Won't you be ashamed? You'll shame the family, you'll ruin the reputation. All those things are shameful. Like, you're riddled with shame. So that's what I help try to undo the shame in just being, because you can't make a mistake. You can't look a certain way. You can't just relax and you can't be silly. You have to be professional and dignified. You have to, all this stuff. Bullshit. So really, what it comes down to,
when you said the poop hit the ceiling, I was like,
yes.
Well,
I didn't know. I wanted to. Sure.
It's okay. It's a common term.
Mm-hmm. So that being said, guilt, there's healthy versions of these, but then when it becomes your way of being, that's when it becomes toxic, that you're always wrong or always right. Yeah. When you think about narcissistic qualities, narcissists generally tend to feel like they have to be right. Otherwise, they're not a person, basically. They don't feel like they can exist if they're wrong. I mean, it's extreme for them. People pleasers always take the blame. They're like, well, maybe I didn't, maybe they have no boundaries. So they just accept whatever people tell them because they just want the acceptance more than anything.
Right.
But at what cost, right? That's what we have to think about. So when we sit here and break our backs for these people that don't appreciate us, that don't see our value, at some point, that's when the adult metamorphosis happens. And you're like, I got to break out of this cocoon by myself. I need to
push out.
Yeah, I need to push out. And so, but it's scary because we don't know what's on the other side. And that's what scares us. Like, what if I go broke and I'm gonna end up on the streets and, I never get a job again? Because who does that actually happen to often? Not a lot of people. It can happen. And even if it does happen, you could still get yourself out of those situations. That's the thing. That was my story. I got put out of my house. But I had connections. I had friends that helped me. And I had these ideas in my head for a business. And I knew that I was a successful person. Like, I just felt like, the effect that I had on people, what I noticed that people said about me, and listen to what people say about you, especially the positive things, because they're giving you clues as to what your purpose is. They said, you know what? Whenever I talk to you, I just feel better about myself. I feel so much at peace. I feel calm. I feel like I can do this. And I was like, what does that mean? For years I was like, what does that mean? But now I know what it means. I need to use this to help people feel better about themselves and get out of those patterns of shame, get out of the toxic traits and, the toxicity that they're holding on to because of fear, because of shame, because of guilt, whatever. Get rid of it. It's not necessary. You can still live a good life just owning your right to be you. You're good enough.
Beautiful. I love it. And you even help people, and we talk about this when you are not being your authentic self, right? Then you have this ease going on, and like hypertension, anxiety, ADHD, and stuff like that. And there are people who came to you on medications, and after they're done, they actually, get come off of their medication, right?
Absolutely. And it actually is very simple. It's a very simple concept to understand. Now, to apply it is different. But conceptually, there's a people pleasing and authenticity. As we swing further away from our authenticity or forsake our authenticity, we get anxious, we get depressed. We're like, something's missing. Like, I'm doing everything that they're saying, but I still don't feel good. I don't still feel happy. Because that's not who you are. That's not what you're about. That was not your decision. Your decisions matter in a big sort of way. The way you see yourself matters. The way you talk to yourself, the way you think about yourself, the way you just present yourself in general. It matters. Yes. And so the closer you can get to authenticity, the more orgasmic you'll feel about yourself. Like, you'll feel sexy. You'll feel confident. You'll feel so overjoyed in yourself. And then when you feel joyful, you don't feel anything's wrong. And then those other things start to fall away, especially identity related stuff like anxiety and depression, if it's about your identity.
Nice.
Some people have their chemical imbalances, but if a lot of people have issues with shame, the toxicity I was talking about with shame, they just feel ashamed to be alive. They feel unworthy. They feel like they're not good enough. Nothing they do is good enough. So they hide themselves and minimize themselves, or go the opposite. I'm so good. You better like me and you better worship me. And then they try to pump themselves up. But there is a middle ground. And that's the good enough.
It's good enough. Yes. You're good enough. Just be, Just be.
And so for example, one of the people I worked with really, like, I would say, had a lot of neuroses. By neuroses, I mean things that sit in your nervous system, right? Make you nervous, make you paranoid, make you fearful about life. He had gone through a lot of things. Lost his wife, major alcoholic. His wife died of alcoholism, was on tons of medications for anxiety, blood pressure, sleep, different kinds of regulation, gout, so many things. By the time we were done, he was on 2 medications, one for gout, one for blood pressure. But that blood pressure med was even very minimal because his blood pressure had come down through calming down. Because when your nervous system is hyperactive or overactive, or like if you have even ADHD or something, like your attention scatters and you can't focus on one thing or finish one thing, or you constantly have to be moving. And even that is trying to prove your worth. Like, look, I'm always busy. And if you're not busy, you're the problem, that type of thing. For perfectionists, we've heard this before. You have to be busy. You can't just relax. Otherwise, relaxation is like laziness. And so there's so many shameful things associated with this. But you know what? It's not shameful to rest. It's not shameful to work either. There's a balance between the two. Anyway, so he started with, I want to say 8 meds. And then as we worked together, he had no purpose. He was retired, all the stuff. I said, a man needs purpose. What's your purpose? And then, he was just scattered. He didn't know. And then I was saying, well, why don't you share your story? Because, the one thing he did do on his own was to decide to remove himself from alcohol. That's hard because I try to remove myself from chocolate. It ain't happening. But I respected that because I tried. I was like, it's hard. And then
there are sugar-free chocolate.
What's that?
There are sugar-free chocolates available.
Yeah. That's true. But he was saying he did it. That's absolutely 100% him. He did that. But then after that, there's a lot that comes with a lifestyle, especially like if you're an alcoholic, you have the party people, your friends, the social life that's tied to that, because that gives you your feeling of connection and your sense of meaning through people, like how it's validating, right? You're the life of the party. You're this, you hang, you're fun, all this stuff. But what if you're not that? That's an identity crisis again. That's what he went through. I said, you're valuable just for being you. I said, tell people your story about how you overcame your alcoholism. And so he did. And now he's like got 1 million+ followers on TikTok. And
wow.
Yeah, he's he's a very fun and exciting, jubilant person and very healthy. The thing that actually saved him is he had good habits, like physical health habits outside of the alcoholism. He always ate a lot of fruits and vegetables. And what is the thing that people die of or get complications of when they are alcoholic? It's malnutrition that causes a lot of the liver issues and, the downward spiral. But he always ate well. And I don't know that his wife did necessarily. They lived a lavish lifestyle because they had money, they retired young and everything like that. And so he had always had a habit of eating well. So that, I think, is what saved him preliminarily. And then it continues to save him physically. But the mental health part and the spiritual health part is what he actually needed help with. And so getting that kind of help reduced his reluctance on the need for meds. Because a lot of heart-related, I'm going to go spiritual on you. A lot of heart and blood-related issues are about family, are about your household. And it's pressure and stress that's forcing up against, maybe you're fighting with your wife, or all these things cause anxiety and build up. And then if your nervous system is not even regulated to begin with, then all these things kind of accumulate, and it's kind of like a perfect storm. But if you can get a handle on the nervous system regulation, find a way to downregulate in a healthy sort of way, like breathing, meditation, stuff like that, taking a walk, removing yourself from that, that situation, then you're more in control. You're more centered, you're more aligned. And then it makes it become easier to nourish yourself in a better sort of way. And then also to see who you are underneath it all is very important, because like I said, that's a more joyful experience. When you realize you're like, wow, I'm actually a pretty decent person. I'm a pretty acceptable person. I accept myself. I like the person I look at when I look in the mirror. I would want to be around that person. That's a very different feeling. And that helps you not need those other, it's like I think metaphorically, pills can serve as a form of validation. Like, look how wrong look how many problems I have. Look how problematic I am. But then as you're like, I'm not a problem, you start having a different dialogue. Like, you know what? I may have had some problems, but I've resolved those problems. And I feel better about the person I am. That's a different tone you're taking with yourself. Yeah. And then your nervous system feels different. You feel calm in your body. You feel more peaceful. you go to the doctor's like, what are you doing? You seem a lot more helpful. You're smiling more. Your chin is up. You're looking at people in the eyes. These are all things that are very important to interacting, to forming those connections, the acceptance with people, all while maintaining your authenticity, maintaining it.
Beautiful.
And so he got down to one or two pills now.
Nice.
And he's very successful.
You are just a wealth of knowledge. I mean, this is just doesn't do you justice at all. Yeah, we need like 3 hours. That was one time me and you we talked for like 2 hours, and it felt like 10 minutes. And I love it. I love it. I wish I can ask you some more questions, but we're running out of time. But I want to ask you a little bit about your 8-week online program. You mentioned to me about this earlier. Can you tell the listener about that?
Yes. So I basically have an 8-week online kind of hybrid group and online program. And if you decide, so the work I do is to help accomplished, career-driven professionals who feel overburdened, underappreciated, find a sense of joy and peace within themselves. That's the program. That's the intent of the program. So you can kind of basically manage life and feel more secure and get out of those patterns of shame that you might have been living in. So in that, when I work one-on-one with people, I have certain things that we discuss one-on-one, but I've translated that into an online program. And so if this is something that's interesting to you, you can use the code podcast20.
Yeah, 20% off.
For 20% off.
For people who are watching this podcast and get this far, and you will get a call with Anju, and Anju will kind of assess the person to see if that's where they're at, and
the call is free, by the way. The call is free. The program is what the 20% off is for.
Yeah, and your website is like beautifully, chosen. It's called ICU-111.com. I love it. I love it. Like, you have this ICU for the non-medical people out there. It's intensive care unit, and Anju used to be a nurse in intensive care unit, and 111,
spiritual number. So it's an intensive care for your soul.
Intensive care of the soul, where you want to break out to be the butterfly and transform.
Break out of the patterns of shame, a late metamorphosis if you want.
I love it. And depends on what time of the year you watch this podcast. You also have like a retreat coming up like really soon in August 26 to 27, 2023. And for those who are you're going to love this woman. You already love her if you're listening to the end. I will put a link down there. Is Linktree ICU 1111. So that would have the second block, right? Is where the second
link is for the actual called the Women's Realignment Retreat.
Right. And it is limited. So act fast if you want to go.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Anju. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And before we go, I would like to ask you just a silly question. It's fun. And I like to ask all my podcast guests this. If you have a genie in a bottle and you have 3 wishes, what would those 3 wishes be?
Okay, this is weird because I was just thinking about something I wanted on a walk. And it's basically something that could record. I always have like thoughts and, visions and stuff that I see that I wish I had a camera for. I wish I could just close my eyes and take a snapshot of that moment or videotape like this conversation so I could remember it or recall it later verbatim because conceptually I get things, but I want it verbatim sometimes because maybe the assembly of words was compelling to me, or like a song that's like in my head that I want to record. So I want a recording device for my mind, for my thoughts and my actions, my thoughts, my visions. whatever I hear, either outside or inside my head, dreams, something like that. That would be so cool that you can go back to and refer to and be like, oh, that's interesting. And, actually look at your dreams. I was like, wow, that's pretty detailed. That's odd, or, whatever it is. Or, and then it'll track your life. That would be a great wish.
Like a photographic memory.
Photographic, and with the audio and video and everything. But on so many levels, conscious and subconscious.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
The thing. And then, so this is kind of, the second thing is, it's kind of related, but I would like to be able to, doing what I do, I can kind of sit with someone and feel what they've been through in terms of their pain, what some of their pains are that they're struggling with, without them actually telling me. But I would like to be able to look at someone and know definitively what struggles they might have gone through, struggles or traumas that they have gone through, that they can't easily talk about or remember. And then I would like to use that information to help prevent health issues for them, prevent or reverse health issues. Because a lot of those thoughts, feelings, or actions cause our disease within our body. And so I'd like to use that to prevent the need for medicine or surgery, and see how we can use that information in a more kind of holistic, psycho-emotional sort of way, but medicinal sort of way. And then the third thing is, I would love to experience a world where what it would feel like if people were authentic, if they could live authentically without the shame, the toxic shame I was talking about, and if they weren't so punitive, letting people just be them, like not getting mad at people because of a race or gender or whatever, but just letting people be them, and then see what that world would be like. I don't know. Would it be better? I don't know. Would it be worse or better? Maybe certain things are meant to keep order, but maybe certain things would be different but better too.
Yeah, I believe so. And those are beautiful wishes. And I would also love to see the world that filled with acceptance, and people can be themselves and don't feel like judged. And I think all of us on some level have that feeling.
I think that would cause less violence. I think that would affect the violence to become less, because you could actually be who you are. You don't have to show that that's not me, and then, or what did you say to me, or, something like that, where you become so defensive.
Yeah, you know who, it just made me think of, it's like what Mahatma Gandhi said.
Oh, Gandhi.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about.
Okay, that was not the one I was thinking about, honestly. It was another.
Yeah, be the change you want to see in the world, right?
Yeah,
you want to see peace.
Yes. He said that.
Be peace. You want to see acceptance. Be acceptant, and be that to yourself as well as for others.
Yeah,
right?
Like, don't expect other people to demonstrate it first. If you know what it's about, then be that, and then maybe other people will follow you.
Yeah, and I think that would be the most peaceful world.
Yeah,
I believe that in that 100%, and I love your wishes. And let me play the universe. Bing! May all your wishes come true. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And let me show you something. This is a blue ribbon. It said, "Who I am makes a difference." And this is a tool that I use to honor people that really make a difference. And I believe all of us make a dent in the world, right? In a good way. And you do big time, Anju. And I just want to honor you for being you, for being your authentic self, for showing up on this podcast and share your story and your wisdom. I was just like, listen, I don't even want to say anything. I just want to listen to Anju and just want to honor you for being all that. And I appreciate you for being on this podcast.
I feel very honored. Thank you.
Me too. And may I place this on you?
Yes, right here.
Virtually. And it goes right here above your heart, pointing up to the sky, where all your wishes come true.
Thank you. I'll take it. I love well wishes.
Yeah, and it's a tradition for me to put a spark on my heart and put it on the cheerleader on here, and it make a sound bing. And that's the sound of all the wishes come true.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. That's so cute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anju. It's been an enlightening experience having this conversation with you. And I'm sure you touched so many lives out there with this.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. I really appreciate it.
And we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.